Your host today. And today I have a very special guest. Stephen Martin is here with me today from Virtual Innovation. And we're going to be talking about creating inclusive websites that deliver results. Now, this is a very topic close to my heart. I think inclusivity, equity, and access is imperative in all areas of not only business, but life. And so I've been looking forward to this session for a really long time. If you don't follow Stephen on LinkedIn, you should, because his posts that he put up are always visual and eye-catching and make you think about your day and the way that you interact with the world. So I would highly recommend you follow him on LinkedIn if you can. I know we've got a really beautiful presentation here for you today. So I'm going to let you get started. And I'm going to make sure everything's running in the back. Now, just as a reminder for folks, if you're tuning in on social media, which a lot of you do these days, please make sure to use the comment section, the chat function, or the Q&A function in order to interact with us. I will be pulling the questions from there to here, where we house the session on Zoom. And Stephen will endeavor to answer them. Now, are you happy to take questions throughout, or would you prefer to do them at the end?
To be honest, I'm happy to do whatever works for you guys. I'll probably, pop them in the chat, and I'm happy to take them throughout, or I'm happy to do them at the end. I'm here as long as you'll let me stay. So. Oh, dude. I've got nowhere to go. I don't think anyone's allowed to leave the house, right?
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah. So what I'll do is I might vet the questions, and if I think they're particularly needed to be answered in that time to have comprehension of what's happening, the understanding of what's happening, then we'll address them. But if not, we might save them to the end, so because they might get answered throughout.
Perfect.
All right, let's roll.
Wonderful. Let me share my screen. So tell me if this is appearing.
It is. It's not in present, but yes.
Here we go. Fantastic.
Perfect. So, thank you.
Awesome. I'll dive through. So thank you everyone for coming to this talk. This is a brand new talk that I haven't given before. So you're the first in the world in history to ever see this. So that's really exciting. I've done this in different variations, but it's the first one just like this. And, it's a topic very close to my heart and, to a lot of people out in the world at the moment. Now, the question you may be asking yourself is, who are you and why should I listen? So something I always ask before I watch anything these days. There's so much content out in the world, and you want to know who you're listening to actually has some experience or knows what they're talking about. So I'm Stephen. I'm a coffee drinking, football playing traveler who used to travel a lot more than I do now. That's actually a photo of me taken in Sweden with my favorite haircut ever that I'd had in a pub over there. It was amazing. And so I like to put that photo around. It makes me happy. And, in life these days, that's important. But really, when it comes to this talk, why should you listen? So I've been in web design for 12 years, probably longer than 12 years. It kind of gets a bit hard to keep up after 10, you stop counting, right? Especially when you get to into your 30s, 40s. I also have dyslexia and ADHD. So I am what would be classed as neurodiverse. I definitely fit in the diversity category, and I'll talk to that a little bit more about why it's important. I'm also one of the world's leading podcasters on adult dyslexia. My podcast has just hit 500,000 downloads worldwide. I post weekly on different topics to help adults with dyslexia, because there's a lot of them out there that are finding out later in life. So diversity, neurodiversity especially, is very close to my heart, but we will be talking a bit about inclusion and diversity around everything and how that affects your website. Because the real question is, how does this affect what you put online, and how does it affect your bottom line, which is really important. So one thing I've learned working with people with dyslexia, visual thinkers, to be bluntly honest, everyone, is we all have different vernaculars and meanings for words. And, without spending too much time on this, if I say the word authority to you, a lot of people have different pictures of what the word authority means. Is it the police? Is it, everyone's got a different visual for it. So I think it's important to set this up. So what do we mean by diversity? Now, I found this online recently and I really liked it. You know, diversity in the animal world is there are millions of different kinds of animals, more than we can count. It's a very diverse set of, I don't want to say things, mammals, animals. Don't worry, we won't be going into how animals use your website. So, you know, you can feel safe that you don't have to worry about that one. We have diversity of people. People come in different shapes, sizes, genders, abilities, and appearances. We're all unique. And the one that really, really interests me, and the one that's you're going to see grow over the next, I think, 10 to 20 years, we're at the beginning of the wave, is talking about neurodiversity of human brains. So no two brains are ever alike, but we do have different names and titles like ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, typical, neurotypical, and more. Now, everyone will experience the world in a different way. And so if you imagine that, if everyone is experiencing the world in a different way, the way they interact with your digital content, your website, is going to be different. And if your website isn't catering to the way they think, many of these people will just leave and not use your service. Even if your service is fantastic, if they can't interact with you, or it's too hard for them. One thing, I'll go into that a bit later because I get really passionate about this topic. So if anyone has any questions at the end about it, I'm happy to talk about it. So what do I mean by inclusion and how does it affect my website? So today we're going to be talking about two groups of diversity, a little bit about the people side and how diverse the world is and how the internet and web is changing a touch. We're also going to talk a little bit mainly about the brains, because everyone interprets the world in a different way. And this is where there's a massive opportunity for websites across New Zealand to really stand out. This is a place where you can have a real competitive advantage because many people are just missing the mark to help, the neurodiverse community. So as I say, neurodiversity got me thinking. So when I was 10, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And it was only at 31 I realized what dyslexia really was and the way I interpret the world. And then a year later, I got diagnosed with ADHD. Now, one of the interesting parts about this, and this is really why this is important. Many people think this is such a small group of people. Why would I even consider looking at neurodiversity? Now, Yale recently came out in the last few years and said that 20% of the world have some level of dyslexia. Now, if I leave that there for a second, imagine that 20% of the world have some level of dyslexia. That is not a small number. Just imagine if 20% of the visitors to your website, were a certain way inclined, you'd have to do something, right? Dyslexia is one of those things. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone with dyslexia is flipping letters, flipping words. You've got to have all this other stuff. There's a lot more to dyslexia than that. It's a much more, it's the way people process information and retain it is the key thing around dyslexia. But it is very important to grasp from this the size of this group. Now, many of these people are undiagnosed. They're not, they don't even know themselves that they're dyslexia. They may suspect it, but many were never diagnosed. In New Zealand, for example, since it was only 2007, dyslexia actually got recognized by the government. Now, I'll let that sink in, 2007. It's pretty nuts when you think about that. And, we're lucky that they did. Over in America, there are places that only in 2019 recognized it, which is quite crazy when you think about it. You've also got people with ADHD. Now, these stats are taken from the internet. With ADHD, there's such a raft of people guessing this. Everyone thinks it's just naughty little boys have ADHD, but actually ADHD stays with you as an adult. Women are the lowest diagnosed. So there are a lot of women with ADHD who are struggling, but were never looked at, diagnosed. They just were much better at keeping quiet than boys. And I'm not going to go into all the detail about ADHD, but let's look at this for a second. There is somewhere, we believe, between 25 and 35%, in our opinion, of the world that has some form of dyslexia, ADHD, high functioning autism. There are different words for that, but we won't go into it here. But let's just say this is a massive segment of the market. And many of these people are entrepreneurs. Many of these people are buying services, products, They're much more easy to actually grab things quickly if you do the right things on your website, and you can help them to do it easier. So the last thing I'll talk about, just to really build why this is important, is talking about the 4 learning styles. Now, this is where more people have a bit of an idea. I was taught a little bit of this when I went to school, and it's only grown since I went to school. And so this isn't brain surgery, but if you haven't seen this before, it may be, may make a lot of sense in life. But you've got 4 types of learners, and no learner is just one type. There's a lot of crossover, but you will definitely prefer one of these styles. So you've got visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic, which is kind of the doing, hands-on. If you learn how to drive a digger, driving a digger is usually how I explain this, but if you learn by just jumping in the digger and waving it around and getting it moving, that makes you kinesthetic. If you want to sit down and read a word-driven manual, and you go, this makes a lot of sense to me, this is how I retain information. Or maybe you need pictures. Like if you imagine, if you think back to the days of using Lego is great at doing visual, very, very visual explainer booklets where it's all picture driven. If that was the way you like to learn, maybe a visual. And then for auditory is all about, listening. Now, with all of these, you can learn in a variety of different ways, but certain ways are going to be much easier than others. And it's more about retention of information. So why is this important to websites? And so, and I'm going to show you this. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive through a few different examples of ways you can use this in your own marketing, in your digital presence that will support these types of thinkers. Because a lot of these people are out there, they want to work with good people, but there are a lot of websites that don't work to their thinking style. For example, if I go to a website and it's just white block text, I just leave it. I don't have any interest at all in reading it. I have dollars in my back pocket and I can't spend them with that person because they've made it too hard for me to operate. Does that make sense? I remember, usually I'm used to speaking on stage more than on this. So I'm used to having an audience come back at me. So bear with me if I do ask you these questions, let's call them rhetorical for now. So the first thing, just before I get into a bit more in neurodiversity, let's talk about stock imagery. Now, stock imagery is the imagery on your website. Now, in an ideal world, every photo on your website would be one of you, your team, your customers, but we have to be realistic. One, it's never been harder to get photography with COVID and all these crazy things happening around us. We're much more likely to draw on stock image libraries. Now, in the old days, you'd go to a website and 90% of the photos would be white males that were running it. That is what you would see. That is what would be around. Everyone would have, website developers were doing this all the time, and that you're seeing them pop up everywhere. Now, one thing to be very aware of is making sure your imagery is inclusive of your client base. Now, if someone's coming to your website and they only see white males, and they only see a very specific gender group or type of person, and it doesn't relate to them, do you think they're going to want to work with you? Do you think they're going to go somewhere else? Now, don't get me wrong, this has improved a lot over the years. Web designers are getting better at it. Stock imagery libraries in the last couple of years have really changed their game, which is fantastic. But just be very aware, if your website hasn't changed for a few years, just go and look through it. Are you showing diversity? Do you have a good balance of male to female imagery? Do you have a good balance of race? Have you got a mixture of humans that look like real people? I'm sure we've all seen the American stock images of people just smiling, and don't look completely fake. It's very important to stick away from that. Another key thing when it comes to diversity and inclusion is looking for the kinesthetic kind of learner. Now, being dyslexic, I'm a real feel kind of touch kind of person when I'm learning. And I love quizzes and surveys. If you want to really up your website game, consider a quiz or a survey. Now, it doesn't have to be about Star Wars movies. It could be about anything. For example, we've got a website on dyslexia, thetruthaboutdyslexia.com. We use a short quiz about dyslexia to get people engaged. And it is the highest thing it's the biggest thing we use to gain new leads to help these people to better navigate life. But people love it because it's kinesthetic. They're doing something as they're progressing. They're not just reading block text, they're doing it as they progress. So having a variety of these tools can be very, very helpful. What type of quiz could you have for your business? If you were in a car rental business, you might have a quiz about picking the right car. If you are in the construction, say you're renting I don't know why I'm going into renting giant vehicles, but that seems to be going through my mind. Say you're renting diggers or something like that. How do you pick the right digger? It could be a quiz. There's a bunch of different options. But the thing to be aware of when it comes to diversity and inclusion is this is something that works with kinesthetic learners. These people are going to love this, and you're going to actually capture more of the visitors to your website using this type of tool. And these have never been easier to put together, by the way. You can try things like Jot Forms is wonderful for this. I'm a big fan of that. If you see truthaboutdyslexia.com, ours is built on the jotform.com platform, jotform.com. See, I can spell. Here we go. The next one is using video. So one of our clients, Life Direct, they're amazing company, but what they realized was happening is people were getting a bit lost in a certain part of their website, and they were struggling a touch. Now, I find their website very clear, but I understand a lot of people who don't have much experience with websites wouldn't find it that clear. So what we did is we decided to create what's called an explainer video. Now, you may have seen them and you may just think, oh, it's a cartoon video, but explainer videos are fantastic about explaining how to do something. So I'm going to play this little video. This is a very short and easy to watch one, but instead of me having to learn this through a bunch of written steps, you can just watch it and learn. So hopefully the volume plays well on this, or this is on the homepage of the Life Direct website.
You're here because you're looking for insurance. That's why you've come to the #1 place Kiwis go for insurance online. But which insurer is best for you? It's not like it's your day job to know, but it is ours. Life Direct gives you a transparent, hassle-free, and no-pressure way to buy insurance. And the best part, there's no additional cost for our service. It's easy to get started. 1. Get a quote. Answer a few questions about what you are looking for. 2. Compare. Instantly see New Zealand's leading insurers, sort by price, features, or speak to one of our friendly team to help you decide. 3. Apply. Fill in our private and secure application form, designed to be the easiest on the market. If you don't have all the information, you can come back at any time.
Awesome. So let me just click out of that, Murphy's Law. We were joking about this before. There's always a moment with a video. It keeps it interesting. So that video is really clear. If someone's watching that who's a visual learner, I would say I'm kinesthetic and visual. That's really clear to me. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then I just want to jump in and do. So that's all I need on a website. That's for me, a clear video, some very visual steps, button to say, let's go, and I'm away. You've got a potential new client using your website. And if you think about it from the visual side, you're more likely to have someone who has visual in their learning style than you are to have read and write, which is interesting. So this is people are much more likely to all learn somewhat via visual, less likely read and write style, which is interesting. So do consider videos. And again, this can be face-to-camera videos. It can be a bunch of different things. Just keep them really clear and concise on your website about what they're related to. Do be aware with ADHD, and to be honest, anyone in today's lifestyle, we have shorter attention spans than ever. So be wary of that. Another great thing around inclusion and making sure everyone can hear is actually having voice players on your website. So on our dyslexia website, and I'll be honest, we don't do this on every website, but for certain sites, you can get an audio player that will automatically read the whole transcription of articles. So there's one out by Amazon. If you search for Amazon WordPress player, I'm trying to think its name, but I will pop that out once it comes to me. You can use something like that to read an article out. The other thing I do a lot is I'll actually record myself speaking the article with a few laughs in between it, and I'll place that audio recording. So on Truth About Dyslexia, you'll notice if you ever go there, there's a huge amount of block text, and you'll probably look at it and go, why is there so much text? This is for dyslexics, right? They're going to struggle to read this. The answer is yes, but Google can read it, and it helps us with search engine optimization. But what I have done is I've put an MP3 player right at the top of that text, and there's me reading it out and going through it and having a few laughs along the way because I'm struggling to read it. And so it kind of brings people into the whole fold. It helps work for those people. And we also have to be aware that we get a lot of, our audience, we get parents or siblings or partners, lots of partners that are trying to learn about their dyslexic partner. So they may want to read, that may be their learning style. Because what we see is a lot of us find it very hard to completely realize how different our style is to someone else. And it's usually one of the biggest issues with communication. Half the challenges of the world are communication, but learning styles is a massive, massive issue. The next one is infographics. So I'm sure you've seen infographics around, but it makes life a lot easier if you can actually share information in a visual format that applies some level of structure. A large portion of people really struggle to structure learning. For myself included, if I see an infographic like this on something I'm interested in, I will read it. If I see the exact same information in block text, I won't read it. Hopefully that makes sense to people. Now, you might be the opposite way around. You might go, actually, I want to read 1,000 words, but this type of thing just looks, maybe, some people might say it looks a bit tacky. And this is the key realization from this talk, is that if you're only creating your website to talk to yourself and people who think in the exact same way as you, you are limiting your audience, and you're creating a website that isn't inclusive. It's not working to the diverse population. And that's, in my opinion, it's not fair. If you've got a great product, you should want other people to use it. I'm sure you do if you're on this talk. So this is a great tip. It's an easy thing to do. Tools like canva.com out there are amazing for creating these. They've got templates. You can literally just pop your words in, find the images. They're changing the world. Now, the next point, how are we doing for time, Anne-Marie? I just can't see my clock actually. Are we doing okay?
Yeah, I think so. Let me just have we've got plenty of time. Take your time. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's always one of those things when you're flying through these. And there will be a recording of this for everyone. So if you do miss any notes, I know I talk sometimes a bit fast. So just play it on, slower, just turn me down for a time point. The next point I wanted to talk about is gamification. Now, you may have seen this more and more over the world, but there are some fantastic, I used to call these toys for websites, but there are ways of getting more kinesthetic people involved in your website. So there's, you may see on the screen here, instead of just capturing like a name and an email, I'm sure we've all been to a website that says, enter your name, enter your email, join our newsletter. Hands up, if you're in the audience here, again, this is me doing it live to stage. Hands up if you've ever joined a newsletter for no reason. The answer usually is no, never. The amount of newsletter boxes that don't get used is quite terrible, right? You've got to give something away, and you can give something people can use, or you can create a fun experience. And we're seeing this on e-commerce websites more and more, where you enter your email address to go on their database, and then you're given a spin of the wheel, which could offer you a 10% off voucher, your first order, 25% off. It could be get free shipping. It could be a bunch of things, and coupon codes are applied to the spinning wheel. Now, these work perfectly for anyone with dyslexia or ADHD, pretty much anyone. Everyone loves to spin and win. Anyone with a slight addiction to this type of thing will love it. And, they have proven to have a massive impact. And it's because it's a kinesthetic tool. You're doing something is changing based on your action, which is really powerful. So if you have got an e-commerce website, these are called spin and wins. So if you Google spin and win on Shopify or WooCommerce, we do a lot of work on WordPress. There's heaps of different things around. Your web developer can help you, or if you do want something, you're welcome to touch base with us and we can refer you to one. But these tools will help you get more people enjoying and playing on your website. Many websites you never want to go back to, and this is really important. And, one of the last things, with this presentation, I don't want to make this presentation so long that people just get bored. I'd rather, this is the way I'd work kinesthetically, as I love answering questions or talking about case studies. But this is the key one. Keep it short or interesting. If you want to work with visual-minded people, kinesthetic-minded people, even auditory people to a point, keep it short and interesting. Have a bit of a laugh. Make people feel something from your website, because when they feel something from your website, they're much more likely to talk to you. They're much more likely to sign up for that newsletter. They're much more likely to join you on social media and follow you than if you just do something that is terribly boring. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I know I'm not even sure how exactly long it's gone for, but I'm here to answer any questions and run through some examples with you now.
Yeah, that'd be really great. I actually have just been posting like crazy, making sure that nobody misses this session, because I think it's just so valuable to Kiwi businesses. I know that later in the year, we're going to be actually chatting with B Lab, definitely in one of our podcasts, who used to be known as Be Accessible. I'm sure you're super familiar with that team there. In addition, because there's, like you said, I know that you said like 20% of New Zealanders are dyslexic, but I thought that there was a statistic there that 20% of all New Zealanders actually required some form of accessibility for things online. So
yeah, I think with this, here's the biggest challenge in the world, to be honest, not just New Zealand, is statistics are horrendously, we're finding them very incorrect, should we say? Like they're very, does that make sense? It's very, we're seeing it, like if you think about dyslexia and ADHD, it's just two of the options. When you go through life, when it's only starting to be diagnosed better now, I'll give you a great example. We're talking with someone over in the UK. They're just looking at making it a blanket diagnosis in schools. And so they actually don't have true data on the real challenge yet. So the same with New Zealand. New Zealand's got a poor record of it. So, 20% is probably a very light accessibility statistic.
I used to work in international language. That was kind of as a teacher. And so using different methodologies in order to convey messages is super important when someone doesn't actually speak your language, so I find that, this hits home with that. But it was surprising to me as you talk about undocumentation, or people who aren't documented in a sense to fit into statistics, I guess, or to be categorized in those areas. A lot of cultures don't recognize some of these things. So there is no facts around it, it's not even a thing. So I can see how, statistically they wouldn't match up with reality.
Exactly. And it's also the thing people don't kind of get, the misinterpretation of what some of these things mean. Dyslexia just sounds like a disability, and it sounds like people read things the wrong way around, where actually it's a preference. It's an issue with preference. So when you're born, every child could be dyslexic. We're visual thinkers. We don't know who our mother is because she's got a name tag that says mummy. We know it. We know her because of her smell, her look, her feel, all these things, these kinesthetic visual references. And then at a certain point in our age, usually 4, 5, 6, some people say it's earlier than that, we go down a path of being more symbolic or less symbolic. So 20% of the population stays less symbolic, and 80% find it easier to read, write. And basically what happens is with dyslexics, we see things in 3D. So we're much more visual. Our brains can connect the dots, etc. And people without dyslexia, are a bit more two-dimensional in the way their brains work. And so people don't realize this, but it makes a massive difference for accessibility to websites, is that whether it's videos, images, it's clarity of phrases. If you can get your website working, there could be 20% of, or maybe not full 20%, but a large number of the population. You might get a spike in sales if your website feels like it hasn't grown, just because you're making it more accessible to this type of people. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, this is exactly why I wanted to do it, because it's a huge market. Like, I of course, inclusivity is my heart, that's just the kind of person that I am. But from a marketing perspective and a small business perspective, thinking about who are your customers and how do you access, more people, you're missing out on a whole cohort of people who can't utilize what you've got out there. It's almost silly, isn't it? It really
it so is. And you think like and I guess for small business owners, especially in the B2B space, dyslexia is we're overrepresented in entrepreneurs. 40 to 45% is the statistic. That when you think about it, it's mad. Like the Richard Bransons, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all of those guys, even Warren Buffett is dyslexic, which people don't realize. There's, not to mention the average, so many. I was at a mechanic shop the other day, and the guy was, to me, because I'm so involved in this, he was obviously, going down that path, but he would never have been diagnosed because he was in his 40s or 50s. He just wouldn't have a clue, right? And so these people they need this type of stuff, even though they don't even know how to ask for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, you don't know what you don't know, really. That's the thing I'm becoming more and more familiar with as I work, with so many small businesses wanting to have the right material for them and, be able to provide that. You can go to people with questions and say, hey, what do you want? What do you need? And it's really hard to let me know what that is, because you don't know what you don't know. So so that's the kind of the same thing. If you've never had candy, how do you know what it tastes like? How do you know what you need?
Exactly. It's like if the old quote that always comes to mind is when Henry Ford said, like, if I'd asked the people what they wanted, they'd have said they wanted faster horses.
Exactly. I love that quote. That's one of my favorites.
I'm sure I butchered it, but it's a great.
I think that was spot on. And there's so many apps and developments that have been made that can integrate with your website that you can utilize in order to create some of these things like you've talked about here today, those quizzes and doing stuff like that interaction with your site. In fact, next week on the 8th of March, we're going to be doing a session with Jebbit, and Jebbit is all about that. It's about a reciprocal relationship with your customers, where you're maybe asking questions, but it's more in that quiz friendly style. We're going to delve into that so that we're not just like taking, but we're also giving, which I think is important in business, and that it actually ties right into this. So it's going to be perfect. So if you're interested in learning about that tool and how it works, and it ties in with not only websites, but also with email marketing systems like Klaviyo and not Campaign Monitor,
MailChimp,
maybe MailChimp, but also there's one more, and I can't remember what it is at this time. It'll come to me in 3 days.
There's so many, right?
Every
day there's 12 more.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's the key, though. And I think you're spot on. If anyone does want to learn about it, watch these sessions. They're so valuable, And I think that the key with these as well is you don't have to run away and do everything that we spoke about. There are two ways to do it. You go and get advice from someone who lives this life, or two, just pick two things from this to look at. Maybe it's consider the stock imagery on your website to make it more inclusive. Maybe that's one thing. The second, maybe it is start a quiz, or maybe it's, start a gamified, something gamey on your website to inspire people to give you their details. You don't have to do everything yesterday as well. Put it on your wall, couple of Post-its, maybe do a little drawing. Like my to-do lists. So, because I'm, the way I do it visually, I'm sure this won't work, but
yeah, it doesn't.
That's terrible. My to-do lists are literally like a bingo board. So I teach people how to do bingo boards with pictures and text to actually be able to achieve things, because giant lists don't work for so many people, right?
Yeah,
so just put it on your wall, make it work for you. And just remember, you don't have to do everything. Most people just get overwhelmed, right?
Yeah. And if you need help, you can, obviously Stephen's put his information here, and, if it doesn't fit within the parameters that he can assist you with, don't forget that our support team is always standing by. I believe they tune on at 8 and they finish at 7 p.m. Like, they're really available a lot throughout the day, and you can contact them at support@digitalboost.co.nz. We even have a phone number. You can talk to somebody on the phone. We can do a Zoom call. So we are also working on that inclusivity and accessibility. So let us know how we can assist you and get you started, help you to make your website, more accessible as well, so that you can engage with more members of the community. Because it'd be a shame for those members to miss out on what you're providing just based off of something as simple as an infographic or that could have been changed on your website. Yeah. These have been some really great tips, Stephen, and calls to action that we can take in little bits and pieces throughout our journey of our business development in order to make our sites and our business visible to more folks out in Aotearoa.
Glad you've enjoyed it. I'm glad it's been an enjoyable experience. I'll make sure I share this out to everyone, because it's an important message to help people across New Zealand.
Yeah, and we'd love to know your podcast again, what that is. That might have resonated with some folks there, and I'd love to put a link to that. If you send me that, I will make sure that we put that out. So
definitely, I'll send it to you. If anyone does want to search for it, it's truthaboutdyslexia.com. It'll have all the information on it. It's on iTunes, Spotify, all the fantastic platforms. If you want to hear my voice, they're very short for ADHD people who don't have much time or mental energy. And everyone will know someone who's dyslexic, whether they know it or not. So it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could listen to your voice is very relaxing. So I can tell you right now, I definitely be keen to
I appreciate that. I've had people say that, because I'm a Kiwi, but I lived overseas for a period of time. So I kind of installed a bit of another accent, but didn't completely lose it. So I've kind of got this strange, this relaxing kind of voice, someone told me the other day.
Yeah, just some comments coming through. Thank you. I will be taking a lot of your content into consideration for my websites. And a second one, this presentation was outstanding. It really was. Thank you, Stephen. It's actually my birthday, and I put this session on my birthday because it means so much to me. So this has been a real great way for me to start my day. So thank you so much.
Oh, hey, you're more than welcome. This was specially made just for you. This has never been done before. It is just your birthday present. And so I'm glad it's been a good start to your day, and I'm glad everything went perfectly.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the multiple platforms. And we'll see you all hopefully tomorrow. Ka kite.